But he uses a simple premise here. What if you wake up and you're a robot? Hello, today I want to talk about Richard Matheson. He's best known for the novel I Am Legend. I've already talked about that in a different video. He's also famous for writing 16 Twilight Zone episodes. He also wrote for many other TV shows. I'll put some on the screen here. As you can see, a lot of these were quite famous. He's also responsible for Kolchak, and his scripts for the two first TV movies ended up inspiring the series. He's also responsible for some interesting films. One of my personal favorites is The Incredible Shrinking Man. I also like Somewhere in Time. But today I'm going to talk about 5 of his Gnostic short stories. I've already discussed one, Born of Man and Woman, on my 5 disturbing Gnostic short stories video. Check that out if you haven't. These are not in any particular order. I love them all equally, but let's get started. First, we have Death Ship from 1953. A spaceship crew discovers a wrecked replica of their ship with their own dead bodies inside. I'm just gonna say it, this is a mindfuck. Excuse my language. This has to do with the power of inevitability. It also has to do with perception and ambiguity. These questions pop up while you're reading it. Are we the real timeline? Can we change our fate? If we try to avoid our fate, do we actually make it happen? In the story, each character responds differently, and those reactions create the horror. And while you're reading it, you think, what would I do? As far as Gnosticism, the ship looks real, functional, even familiar, but it's wrong. It's like they're breaking through the illusion. But their problem is agnosis, ignorance of their true condition. Every bad decision comes from treating the false world as real. This is almost Buddhist or Taoist as well. Don't cling to outcome. It will probably be your undoing. This was made into a Twilight Zone episode of the same name, season 4, episode 6. And here's a fun fact. Death Ship was the inspiration for the Christopher Nolan film Interstellar. But I think this taps into primal existential forces and fears, not fear of dying violently, but fear of being. One thing you'll notice if you read enough Matheson is that the universe doesn't care, and that's the point. Next we have Button Button from 1970. It poses this question: would an ordinary person be willing to cause a total stranger to die in exchange for $200,000 by simply pushing a button? This was first published in the June 1970 edition of Playboy. This was also a Twilight Zone episode, but in the revival from 1986, Season 1, Episode 20B, Matheson strongly disapproved of the Twilight Zone version because they neutered the ending, but this also forms the basis of the 2009 film The Box, and I think this has monkey's paw vibes. There is a moral lesson here. It's also about how different people deal with temptation, and that's the $200,000 question. How do you deal with temptation? The female character and the male character deal with it completely differently. The female is much like Sophia, needing to know, needing to see, damn the consequences. Her curiosity is her own worst enemy. But I think Matheson really understands both natures, the male and female perspective, almost what's hardwired into us. And this is basically Pandora's box. But there's also an Eve thing in here too, with this dark Gnostic twist. One thing that made me laugh is when the salesman referred to the company that built the box as of international scope instead of saying their name. I just thought that was like hilarious. I just think that's perfect. The salesman here is almost kind of a tempter, devilish figure, almost Faustian kind of thing. Then we have Deus Ex Machina from 1968. A man discovers he is actually a robot after cutting himself shaving. So Deus Ex Machina means God from the machine. It usually means a plot device. An unsolvable problem is suddenly or abruptly resolved by an unexpected and unlikely way, like the gods intervene. But Matheson is using the title in a different way. It's kind of an inside joke. But he uses a simple premise here. What if you wake up and you're a robot? In I Am Legend, he asks, what if you're the last man on Earth? It's in these what ifs that Matheson excels, I think. But it's not just that he examines the premise. He kind of dances around it. He asks more questions. And by the end, you tend to expect something. And the easy thing would be just to subvert expectations and do the opposite of what's expected. That's the lazy way, but he doesn't do that, ever. And that's probably why he's great. The simple premise grows and grows by him asking more questions. The reader makes their answers, and then the twist at the end is always ambiguous, where it floats in your mind long after the story is finished. It's a very skillful way to construct stories, I think. But I can think of nothing more Gnostic than a mundane action like shaving, revealing the reality of the situation, leading you to realize that you're a robot. By stating that, I'm actually not giving that much away about the story. But what makes this so chilling is how Matheson expands the premise. And the more questions he asks, the more Gnostic this story becomes. And the point is nastier than surprise, you're a robot. It gets worse, much worse. This is about identity collapse through body betrayal. And aren't we all just flesh robots anyway? Next, we have The Prisoner from 2001. A man finds himself on death row in 1954, but claims to be a nuclear physicist from 1944. This and the last story remind me a lot of Philip K. Dick. Actually, I think both writers have a lot in common. I checked, but sadly they never met, as far as I can tell. They wrote in the same circles around the same time, so I thought maybe. It's a shame, really. Can you imagine the conversation they'd have? Can you imagine if someone recorded that? But anyway, this is about identity and disbelief. No one believes the protagonist's claim about who he is, even as his execution looms in the background. This is all about tension and the existential question. Who is he really? The prisoner aspect is pure Gnosticism, but this is also about being misunderstood, being powerless against the system, being misjudged. I mean, how many times have you tried to tell someone the reality of your life for them to just dismiss it? They don't listen. They don't believe you. My final story is Nightmare at 20,000 Feet. A passenger on an airline flight notices a hideous creature trying to sabotage the aircraft during flight, or does he? This was probably the most famous Twilight Zone episode ever, maybe. It was from season 5, episode 3, and starred William Shatner. This was so famous, it was redone for Twilight Zone the movie in 1983, and George Miller from Mad Max fame did this section. There is a pretty fascinating Wikipedia article with all the times it's been done, either rewritten or parodied, and it's a lot. But the short story differs from these quite a bit, I think. And there's something about reading it that is advantageous here, I think. So this one is all about fear, irrational fear, almost hypochondria. But that's what it seems like on the surface. What this is really about is peering inside fear. And that's what makes this most Gnostic, I think. To be a Gnostic means to overcome your fear, to entertain the idea. It's maybe one of the hardest things to do. In some ways, it's easier to be an atheist. And even having one benevolent God as an explanation is easier. But the Gnostic worldview demands more. But this is a brilliant rendering of panic that leads into a psychosis. The other Gnostic idea here is that there are beings that live outside of space-time. It's a gremlin in the story, but it feels deeper, especially in the written version. In the visual versions, you see the beast. In the written one, it's all your imagination. And the way he describes it is very kind of fleeting and just mysterious. The thing outside of space-time entices you to ruin. That's the idea here. And then there's this ambiguity. Is he losing his mind or glimpsing the truth for the first time? The beauty of Matheson is that he works on several levels at once, and this story is no different. Yes, it's a story about a guy on an airplane having a panic attack. But you could easily transpose the story somewhere else, into a medieval mystic peering into a looking glass or a scrying mirror. The plane window is like that. The fear is the same. He tries to tell everyone and they think he's crazy, but he knows. He's the knower. And like most of Matheson's work, the ending is left ambiguous for the reader to work out themselves. Anyway, I think he's something special. If you haven't read any of his stuff, you should check it out. Many of these stories are quite short, just a few pages, but yeah, I think they're great. Anyway, I'll probably do a second version of this at some point. If you have anything to say about this, you can put it below, but that's all I got. Have a good day. Take care.